James chapter 1, verses 2, and looking all the way ultimately through verse 8, but right now let's read 2 through 4. Consider it a great joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you experience various trials, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its full effect so that you may be mature and complete, lacking nothing. There's not really a whole lot that needs to be explained about these verses. They're very self-explanatory, but let's just stop and read verse 2 carefully one more time. Consider it a great joy. Right? It's almost a dare. I dare you. But it's a good dare. It's a command. Consider it a great joy whenever you experience various trials. Verse 3, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. Do you know that? The testing, the various trials, the testing of your faith produces endurance. And then if you continue on down, and maturity, spiritual maturity, and then right after that, and completeness, lacking nothing. In 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 17, it calls that completeness being equipped for every good work. So consider it joy when you have these various trials in your life, because what they're doing is they are working out your faith so that it will be an enduring and mature and complete faith, so that you will be an enduring, faithful, and mature and complete Christian. So count the trial as joy. Verse 5. And this is an odd one because right here we have a verse that's often just kind of plucked out and used by itself. But it's in this whole context. This is what verse 5 says. If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives to all generously and ungrudgingly, and it will be given to him. Now, do you desire God's wisdom? I remember when I first came to pastor this church, different people would ask me, how can I pray for you, James? And I would repeatedly say and emphasize, pray for wisdom. Proverbs 2 talks about the storehouses, the vast storehouses of wisdom that God has, and from his mouth he gives us wisdom. Pray for wisdom. Pray for wisdom. But again, don't forget the context that this is in. We're going to continue from there and read verses 6, 7, and 8. But let him ask in faith without doubting. Now remember what we had just read in 2, 3, and 4 about those various trials that strengthen us and give us that enduring faith and that maturity and that completeness. Now he says, when you are asking for wisdom, you need to do it with that kind of faith. For the doubter is like the surging sea driven and tossed by the wind, and that person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord, being double-minded and unstable in all his ways. God's pathway to giving you wisdom is through trials that increase your faith. Do you want to be a wise man or a wise woman? Ask God, and he gives to all liberally. But he says, ask in faith, and that's this faith that he grows in us. He strengthens into maturity and completion in us. It is an enduring, unwavering faith. And he grows that in us through these various trials. So consider those trials joy, because they are the pathway to faith increased. And that increased faith is the means through which we ask for this wisdom from God. So he says, ask in faith without doubting. And he goes on to describe the doubting faith. It's like a surging sea driven and tossed by the wind, and don't expect to receive anything from the Lord, being double-minded and unstable then in all your ways. When I was a young boy, early teens, especially. That's kind of the time frame that I remember this. Of course, it would have gone through really most of my teen years. But anyhow, we had a wood stove. That's how we heated our house. And we had a splitting maul, and we had a splitter. That was me. And I would typically, as most boys probably would, I would go out almost every night and split, because usually I didn't want to split wood enough in one night to last for 2 days. So because I didn't want to think ahead as a teenager, I would end up splitting wood almost every day. But I remember going out to the front of the house, and you'd gather up the wood and you'd go to split it. And there were some of those pieces of wood that you could not hardly split. In fact, some of them I continually bypassed. I don't know whatever happened to them. But they were so gnarled up. They had been at perhaps the side of the woods or the side of the road, and they had been beaten, and they had been battered, and they had been twisted, and they were hardened. They were strong. They were enduring and mature and complete, if you will, and they could not be shaken. That's what these various trials do to the Christian's life, to their endurance, to their maturity, to their completion unto every good work. That's what trials will do for you. Just like that piece of wood, it just strengthens you, and then with that kind of faith, we go before the throne of God and ask for his wisdom. So again, do you want his wisdom? Romans, here's a beautiful early hymn for the church found in Romans chapter 11. I'm just going to read the very beginning of it. You're familiar with it probably anyways. 11:33, oh, the depths of the riches, both of the wisdom and of the knowledge of God. The depths of the riches of his wisdom and of his knowledge. And he says, ask and I will give it to you. But ask in faith unwavering, the kind of faith that I will create in you by allowing you to experience various trials unto the end of your maturity. Christian man or Christian woman, listen. Are you going through a trial? Take that with all joy, knowing that God is working his plan in your life to strengthen you to maturity, to give you his wisdom so that you can be mature and complete, lacking nothing, equipped for every good work, enduring in him until the end, for his glory and for your good.